able to see a red screen that says Winning Pricing Strategies for Cross-Media Marketing Services. So hopefully, if you can't see that, let me know right now. And nobody is, so we must be good. All right, so let's get going. And please ask your questions, because that will be not only helpful for you, but helpful for the folks that end up watching this as a recorded webinar. So what we're going to talk about initially is why and well, what is a pricing strategy and why do we need one? And then various ways that you can consider how to price for cross-media. And I also put a little bit of web to print in there because that's also something that you are probably kind of struggling a little bit with how to price, and then some final thoughts about moving forward. So first thing I want to do is just reinforce that you want to be doing this, and here's why. This is an InfoTrends study that was done asking print for pay people who currently use cross-media services what their top 3 benefits that they were receiving from offering those services. And you can see those top 3 are top 3 things are pretty important. Growing revenue, expanding their customer base, and it's differentiating them from their competitors. So that's why you put up with this whole aggravation of having to learn something else and figure out how to price it, because ultimately it's valuable to the business. On another, along the same lines, part of that same study, we asked how profitable are the campaigns that you use, that you sell, and they broke it down by types of channels that were involved. And you can see that the most profitable ones that businesses were doing involved print, email, web and mobile landing pages, and also mobile messaging, followed close behind by print, email, web, and mobile landing pages, followed close behind by just simply print and email. So, and then even below that, a little bit print and web landing pages and mobile landing pages. So you can see there's an awful lot of profit in there, even going down to just simple things like email and landing pages or print and landing pages. There's plenty of opportunity for profitable revenue in there. And here's the real ultimate sort of reason why you want to get involved in that. When print service providers were asked how much did your digital print volume increase once you started offering cross-media marketing services, you can see that 25% said it grew between 5 and 9%. Another 31% said it grew between 10 and 14%. And if you add up all of those that are above 14%, so 15% and above, it's another 25%. So a lot of increase in digital print volume that's actually driven by adding or adding to your portfolio of services the ability to do cross-channel marketing. So it's good for you. So hopefully everybody's convinced of that. And now we're going to work on what are the things that we can do to make that easier for you. One of the things I wanted to point out is you're not alone with kind of struggling with how to price these. When we ask service providers, what are your top challenges when you go to offer cross-media services, determining how to price is at the top of the list, so you're right in there with everybody else. They also felt like there were some issues with educating clients and really understanding the whole campaign strategy. And we've been working on that campaign strategy the last time we were all together. We're working on, how to put together a strategy that will get the job done. So we're going to tackle that top one today, and hopefully we're slowly but surely getting rid of all the obstacles that would be in the way of you successfully offering cross-media services to your customers and doing so profitably. So I kind of broke down all the things that go into cross-channel campaign, because understanding what you're going to have to do is part of understanding how to price it. So there's things that go in the setup of a campaign that may have to do with data or strategy. And in this diagram, we're starting with sort of the data issues. Then you're going to worry about managing that campaign and orchestrating that campaign, and then you have to execute it, and here's all the pieces that you have to do in order to execute it. So you've got to program your variable data, you've got to get the printing done correctly, you've got to set up your emails, you've got to generate pearls, you've got to set up your text and mobile messaging. So here's another way of looking at that, which is kind of in written form, but let's think through the things. You've got to devise your strategy and how you're going to orchestrate the campaign, what pieces and parts are you going to use for cross-channel. You have to do some project management in there, so that's something that you should charge for. And then there's going to be varying layers of data. The customer may just give you the data ready to go, or they may say, here's my big list and I have 2 segments, so separate them out. You may have to purchase data to supplement what they're doing. And then another category of things which I call data manipulation. They may give you data that says, here's what everybody bought last year, but it's in codes, for instance, for type of product, and you're going to incorporate that into your campaign, and it needs to actually be the names of those products because the customers won't understand them in code form. So in order to get your job ready to go, you've got to do that translation between what they call products in their data and what you're going to lay into the variable documents or messaging. So that you can classify as data manipulation. Then you have all the creative aspects, so art direction, design, and remember you're going to be designing multiple versions. Copywriting, and you're going to be copywriting for multiple versions. You could be hunting around for stock photos or original photos. Probably most of you are going to be using stock photos, but don't underestimate the amount of time that takes. That is a huge time robber looking for images. So you want to contemplate and put into your pricing how much time it takes you to find all this stuff. Then you have to produce it, and that's any of the components that you've included. So direct mail, landing pages, emails, mobiles, banner ads, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever the channels are that you're using, you have to price for doing all the setup accordingly. And then also don't forget that one of the benefits of cross-channel is that you can make fast changes as it's being executed, which ultimately can lead to better results. So factor in some time to modify things as you see the campaign unfold. You may have hosting of those microsites or landing pages. You may be giving your prospect, your customer, access to the dashboard, which is valuable for them, so you might want to charge for that. You're going to be pulling reports and giving those to them if they don't have the dashboard, so you want to charge for that. And then the real value, too, is in looking at what happened and making some recommendations on that. So you want to have that time in there. And then lastly, if you had to do any extensive pre-sale, so if this particular sales opportunity required you to storyboard or do some wireframes or spend a whole lot of time on data research, anything like that, then you want to incorporate that back into what you're going to charge so that you can recover those costs. Let me just ask if anybody has any questions at this point. If you do, you can unmute yourself. Say, any questions?
No, none from here.
Okay. Okay, so it seems like we're making sense, so we'll keep going. All right, so basically you can look at it as a cost-plus situation. So what does it cost you? What is the lowest you're willing to make? And what is the highest you'd like to make? So that's one way of looking at it. Or the other way of looking at it, which is transforming what you're doing for them into value so that your price is based on value. And remember, we've talked about this in previous sessions, increased response rates, consistency of the brand, reducing the inventory and therefore obsolescence of other documents, increasing the average order size or selling more, really important, enhancing support to dealer channels. If your customer is doing a campaign and making it available to their sales channels, which could be dealers or franchisees or any of those things. And then you're also helping to, because it's a better form of communication, increase the lifetime value of that customer for your customer, so their customer, reducing attrition and helping, facilitating them buying more from your customer. So that's very valuable. You also want to keep in mind that price should help you achieve your financial goals. It should fit the realities of the marketplace, what the market will bear. You've probably heard that before. And it needs to support everything else that you're doing. So an example I came up with was, let's say you're a convenience store that offers coffee. And you've got, pots that have been on the burners all day long, and the coffee's kind of burnt, and all they have to put in it is, powdered cream and sugar. versus a Starbucks, you're not going to be able to charge for that coffee the same thing that a Starbucks costs to give it to you in wonderful surroundings with lovely music playing and big comfy chairs, and to be the envy of all your friends because you're carrying a Starbucks cup around. So even though it's still a cup of coffee, you are not going to be able to get the same price that you could get at a Starbucks or even a Dunkin' Donuts that has the position in the market of being, excellent coffee for the price, for instance. So you want whatever you're going to charge has to fit in with the position that you have in the market. So there's a whole bunch of diverse pricing models. You can look at what your competition is doing. You can look at a loss leader to bring people in, and a lot of times people do that with web to print. So I'm not going to charge for the setup of this because you're going to be doing your printing for me, through me. I'm not going to say that's the best strategy, but people will do that. You can do the cost plus, which is much more traditional, but tends to give value away, leave money on the table is another way of looking at that. You could look at what the contribution is to the business. You could look at predatory pricing, which is I want to take my competitor out of the equation, so I'm going to go after their customers by offering a price that they can't match. You may want to have a lower price in order to get penetration in the market. You want to have this value or value-added pricing, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute, or premium pricing, which basically comes because you're the only game in town. You have a resource that is scarce, or you are or definitively known as the best in the marketplace. So, for instance, like Apple may be able to get away with that because they have a recognized brand that is innovative and ahead of the curve. All right,
okay.
So yes?
This is Jay. I have a question. Back on these pricing models, which one do you see is prevalent in, say, the small commercial printers? You see a mixture of many, or would you say that one model is prevalent?
Okay, that is an absolutely fantastic question. What you see is a lot of cost plus, basically, because they don't know how to do it any other way. So there's a lot of cost plus, which always leaves money on the table, and it tends to, as an industry, reduce the value in the eyes of the consumer. So I'm not a fan of that, but it is at least understandable to most small printers because that's how they price their print. So you see a lot of that. You also see a lot of what I would consider a loss leader type approach. They want to really get that first client, or they really want to do some of those cross-channel campaigns, so they basically give it away to be able to get some experience under their belt. But then once they have the experience, they're kind of afraid to transition their pricing up to value added because they're afraid, well, I'm going to lose this customer, I'm going to lose other customers. So they kind of get stuck in that loss leader road, which I think sort of hampered the whole adoption of cross-channel in our industry, because I think a lot of people did that, and we've talked about it, sort of that one-and-done campaign is very difficult. Today, you don't typically hit a home run out of the chute or first time at the plate. So when they did that and artificially lowered the price, then they felt like, well, darn, we did a lot of work and we didn't really make a lot of money on this. So they weren't so eager to do it the next time, and it's kind of slowed everything down. So I would say those are the primary based, and then followed probably by competition based. I know what my competitors, so I'm going to offer the same thing. So you see a lot more of those than you do premium value added type of selling, and you really don't see a lot of penetration or predatory stuff going on in this side of the market. You see it a lot in printing. Does that answer your question, Jay?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so this question was, does your operation offer any of the following services? So I wanted to kind of show you what the rest of the market is doing in terms of selling some of those incremental things that we're in, or those additional value adds that I outlined in what goes into a cross-channel campaign. So, they asked these 166 print providers, how many of you offer project consultation, and 89% said that they did. Now, the follow-on question to that should be, do you charge for it? And I have some statistics on that. Project management as well. Do you offer project management? 8% said that they did. And do you offer marketing strategy and development? 78% said that they did. So my observation on this is that I would say that they want to, and they think they are, but whether or not they actually are may not be as high of numbers as they indicated in the survey, would be my observation from working in this market for so long. You can see yellow is who said, I'm not offering those now, but I plan to. And then the green is, I have no plans to offer, and then a little bit of an orange stripe here is, I have no clue what I'm doing or what's going on in my world. Now, here's what I promised, like some of the, if you're going to do cost plus, like what those hourly charges are. And this is also, we'll talk about when we get to the value add. I mean, you always have to figure out what the value add for your customer is, but make sure you can do what you're proposing and make money yourself. So you have to have some sense of what these things are going to cost you as well. So let's just talk about the customers in this survey. For project consultation, they were charging that 40% charging hourly, 23% charging a flat fee for that. 29% said they didn't charge at all for project consultation, and some didn't know. Project management, very close, 42% said that they charged hourly. Another 32% said they charged a flat fee. 17% had no clue what they were doing. And then marketing strategy, 39% offered it as hourly, 39%, so an equal amount said it's a flat fee. I don't have a good, like I can't give you a strong recommendation on which of those is better. I think there's some value add in the market to say, okay, we're going to charge you $500 to develop this strategy, and that's it, over, under. If it goes over, we're eating it. I mean, there may be some value there in basically saying we're going to do our best job of estimating what we think this campaign is going to take and how much effort we're going to put into it. And if we're wrong, then that's on us. That could be a differentiating type of strategy. Marketing development, on the hourly thing, the thing you have to make sure is that you don't end up with scope creep and you think it's going to take 4 hours and you're charging them hours, and the next thing you know, you spent 12 hours at it and you haven't okayed that with them. So that's the other thing to think about. Hourly fees for business development. So for marketing strategy and development, you can see it's the means for the people that we surveyed was roughly in the ballpark of, you know, $85 to $100 per hour for marketing strategy. Now, for you guys, you have to look at what value you bring to the table as owners. For instance, when I ran my company, I charged for project development and project strategy $175 an hour, and what's included in that is the 30 years of my experience that came beforehand. So if some of you in that class have a lot of experience, that goes into your hourly rate. Think about it as like an attorney. You're paying for everything that attorney has learned, all the experiences that he's had, and that has to go into his hourly rate. So you may look at it and say, well, you know, I'm paying this person $25 an hour, which is one way of looking at it. But if you're going to be involved as an owner and you're going to be adding value to it, then that's worth something. So your hourly rate for business development or strategy or something may be more than that. Project management is a little bit different because that's usually a person who you are paying a salary to, and that may be a little bit easier to translate into a straight out hourly cost. Does your operation offer any of the following services to customers? And this was from the creative services side. So you can see that, you know, almost all of them offer graphic design. 58% are offering copywriting services, and even a few are starting to get involved in video services. And with the onset of YouTube and sort of the handheld video production opportunities, we've all kind of become much more comfortable with, how do I want to say that, you know, sort of that real world video of things. So a lot of people are doing video production who aren't video, you know, don't have the experience in video production, and that still works for this type of campaign. I'm going to give you an example of that. Like I have a client that supports fundraising for some colleges. So they shoot some video around campus, some people wishing people Merry Christmas, and they put it all together basically using a flip camera and a little bit of iMovie, and bingo bango, they're doing video production. That's not the level of, a commercial that would be on TV. You can see that graphic design is pretty ubiquitous across the industry. And I will say a little bit about copywriting. In my opinion, copywriting is much harder than graphic design, and there are graphic designers all over the place. There are not that many good direct mail copywriters. So you're going to see in a minute what I should price for copywriting. I think that's underestimated in my opinion. Okay, so the next question was, how does your company charge for the following services? And you can see lion's share again in that hourly rate or in flat fee sort of area. And you can see how it varies, hourly rate on graphic design and copywriting, a little less on the video production. So they're doing more of a flat rate on the video production. Here's their hourly rates. Video production, $113. For somebody shooting a flip camera type of video, that's probably realistic. If you have some experience and you're doing, you've been in the industry and you're doing a really professionally creative video, that's way too low. Graphic design, $82. Again, I look at that, how much effort or how much experience is going into it. That may be an okay hourly rate for a lot of things, but if you're becoming an expert on cross-channel and you're adding value in that realm, then that $82 is too low. And then copywriting, clearly too low. Copywriting is one of the most difficult things to find is good copywriter. Does your operation offer any of the following services to customers? And here's just an example of some of those other things that went in there and what the rest of the market looks like. So data preparation, that's that data manipulation, data prep category. A lot of people doing that. List acquisition, a lot of people doing that. Tracking and reporting, 71% for pearls. Campaign response and tracking, 66%. So you can kind of see a lot of people already offering it. And then, a few that are getting ready to offer it. And in some cases, like database programming, larger chunks that don't see themselves going into that area of the business. How does your company charge for any of the following services to customers? So here we go again. But notice that for some of these, it took a bigger chunk into flat rates. Data preparation, about even between hourly and flat rates. Personalized URL, much higher for flat rate. And I think that's because somewhere along the line, people started saying setting up a simple landing page campaign should cost $2,500, so everybody was kind of following that lead. Again, that depends on the complexity if you're going to really be able to do that and do that profitably. But I think that's why you see a bigger chunk of people doing the personalized URLs and tracking and reporting as a flat fee. Campaign response and tracking, flat fee again. So you can see this differing a little bit over like the graphic design and the other services that we talked about. Hourly rates, it's programming 104. And I'll tell you that, but again, a person who's intuitive and can catch mistakes worth their weight in gold. That's too low probably. We used to charge $125 an hour for database stuff. Setting up campaign dashboard, that's more of a execution type thing, so that $94 may be realistic. Personalized URL generation, that's basically taking their data and appending the pearl. That's not all that intuitive, but typically it's the same person doing all of that. So that $100 an hour mark makes sense to me. And you can see that goes all the way down. And again, I will point out here, a good database person who's not only just pushing buttons, but is intuitive and can notice things that don't make sense is really valuable. And so, where we've said down here that data preposition is less valuable, or data preparation is less valuable, I'm not sure I agree with that. So I probably do everything that has to do with data, in that $100 range. Does your operation offer any of the following services to customers? And now you're looking at, the Pearl type personalized variable thing. So 90% of them are saying they're already doing variable data, online print ordering and submission. That's your web to print in some form or fashion, 82%. VDP composition is more complex, like a dynamic document where it's not just laying in your address. We've got variable imagery, variable blocks of copy, things like that. That's what they're classifying as variable data composition. And then managing assets, which is another sort of up-and-coming opportunity down the pike. How does your company charge for the following? So again, here we go. Hourly for the composition and the programming, a little less so on digital asset management. That kind of jumps up, takes a big jump on flat fee. So you can see, the things that people are charging hourly for and the things that people are looking at flat fee for. Here's your pricing on that. Website development and programming right around that $100 mark. And I see these two things as being very equal, so I'm a little bit surprised by the drop there for VDP composition. Again, that's a good, talented person who's doing that dynamic document, so I would say back up in that $100 range myself. Now, laying in addresses, yes, much simpler. You may want to calculate that based on what you're charging to do addressing on the mail side, if it's simple. All right, just wanted to put a little bit in here about mobile because that's coming. Whether you're doing it today or not, it's going to be coming here, relatively quickly. We're all going to be dealing with it. So yes, offered today, 53% said yes. On barcode generation, so like QR codes and things like that, only 22% are actually doing like message deployment for SMS and mobile. And then a very small of them were actually developing apps. And you can see that the apps jump up in flat fee. That's because if you charge by an hour, they have a big scope creep potential. And so people would get their clocks cleaned, if you will, on making money on that. So they're looking at more flat fee rather than hourly rate on that. And you can see that a lot more people don't plan to get into mobile, but I expect that will change in the coming years because I feel like everybody's going to have to. And here's your hourly breakdown, hourly flat fee on those mobile services. And you guys are going to get this whole slide deck, so you'll have this, to go back and reference. And then here's your hourly rates for the mobile application development. And you can see messaging generation and application up there near 100. Just sending out a blast email or a blast text message, that drops down a little bit lower. But basically, guys, you're going to have the same person doing this. So, it's probably easier to just determine what you bill that person's time out as and leave it there for everything that they do. What type of transaction charges? Because now you're like with email blasts, what you could charge for the number of emails that you're actually processing. So you can get a little handle here on that. 26%, 25% are charging per record. Then there's a little bit smaller group that are charging flat fees. Some don't charge at all. And if your flat fee is high enough, then that I'm actually okay with that, because you really want to incentivize your customer to do what they need to do and not be like, oh, let's cut it down. I want to pay the record charges. I mean, the goal is to get the objective accomplished. So if you go big flat rate and you don't care if they send the email again, and we're talking about, very small things here, 1 cent, 2 cents per record. I'm a believer in this is the flat fee for the campaign as a whole. And if we need to send out another wave, I have enough fluff in there to be able to send out another wave, because ultimately your goal is you want it to work. And if you need to tweak messaging and send it out again within those channels, email and text messaging, it's relatively inexpensive to do that. And then here's your charges on that. You can see 50% are somewhere between 1 and 5 cents, 26% between 6 and 10%. You can see how that breaks down. All right, online services. This was for you guys, just a little taste on the the web to print side. Now, Jay, do we have any questions before I go into that side of things?
I don't have anyone else.
Actually,
Okay,
this must be that good, or everybody's like buying Christmas presents online right now. Okay. All right. So let's go through just, again, because I think all of this lumps into value-added pricing. So does your operation offer any of the following services? So email marketing, email page design, and you can look at this. A lot of them are today. Okay, and then 10 to 20% of them are going to offer it. So again, these are going to end up being as ubiquitous as being able to do a 4-color postcard. How does your company charge for the following services? And you can see again that blend between hourly and flat rate types of services, with the Pearl generation and the microsite building a bigger flat rate percentage of the whole. Hourly rates, again, we're hovering around that $100 mark, and that may just be because we didn't know anything any better than that. And then you see it drop down a little bit for email page design. Email page design, landing page design, a little bit more technical than just design, and it's actually worth its weight in gold if you're good at it, because you don't have crazy layers and things like that cause issues when you go to program it. So if you have a good designer that knows how to lay things out correctly and can program for email, mobile, landing pages, that kind of thing, that's very valuable. And again, I would take that price back up. It may take them, you may charge more for an hour, but they're more efficient, and you're going to have less problems in the actual production of whatever it is you're doing. So it's kind of like, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. What type of transaction charges does your company have in the following services? And again, some per record, some flat fee, tilting towards the per record for these things. What does your company charge per record for the following services? And 50% on the emails, probably that 1 to 5, 5 is high. I would say that category is heavily tilted towards the 1 to 2. On the Pearl side, you can see it jumps up up into that 6 to 10 range. The wing rate for a Pearl that you actually charge for is about 8 cents, and you're paying the vendor, somewhere in the 3 to 4 cent range if you're not doing a ton of them. The more you do, the lower the vendor charges you, and then if you keep it at 8%, you're going to make a little bit more money. Now, there's some other things to keep in mind, though. Complexity. If something is really complex, you can kind of bump it up, like a pain and suffering factor, which I know we all use when we're doing our estimates on the print side. So you may want to look at, is this a really complex job that other people might shy away from? Well, it makes your ability to do it scarce, and you have more pricing power. So that's a place where you can, up the value there, even if you're on cost plus. And some other things might be they want a really fast turnaround. You may have that, pain and suffering for slow payers that you upcharge for, or this is a, incredibly picky or demanding customer, so you have that headache factor put in there. And we all tend to do that on the print side. Well, it's just exacerbated on the cross-channel side. If they're a pain in the neck on the print side, they're going to be a bigger pain in the neck on the cross-channel side. And then timing. So you can also look at, hey, the guy who calls you 2 days before Christmas and says, hey, can you blast out this Christmas card to my customer base, and you're doing a million other things, then you may have some pricing power involved in be there, because you can get it done, so you can charge a little bit more because it's in the thick of the season. Okay, so now we're back to that thinking about price for value. So we're going to transition over and talk about that. Jay, any questions before I leave sort of the cost plus model with some upcharges potentially for timing and turnaround, and if it's a good customer or not?
No, I think that was pretty clear, and there was a lot of good information there.
Okay. All right, so now we'll talk about value. Okay. So the first thing about value is you can't really sell a ton of value to a purchasing person, because their job is to buy something that was thought up already at the best possible offer at the time. So it's hard to add value in a discussion there. So that's a that's something you need to think about. You could be doing the best possible campaign known to man, but you sold it to a purchasing person, and you don't have the same flexibility for value pricing that you would if you were talking to a management level, senior management level, or either top of the company type of thing. So when you're talking to executives in the higher end of the departmental management head, or the owner of a business, let's say, or a senior level management person, it's more of a consultative sale. They're expecting more value added pricing. So that's kind of the sweet spot of where you want to be. All right, so let's look at how you calculate your pricing based on value. Okay, so I think I used this example, but I'll refresh your memory. This was that simple variable data postcard for Paxar America. So, simple, we're going to incorporate data about what that customer had purchased before. We're comparing it to typical response rates of 1%, and we're going to do a variable data postcard and mail that out. Now, this particular campaign didn't have any cross-channel aspects in it, but I'm going to talk about how you could have incorporated that in there. So you need some points of data to figure out value. So you need to know who you're targeting, because it's more valuable actually to get leads than it is to sell stuff to existing customers. How many pieces, how big is the audience is important to calculate value. What are you comparing it to is an important element. So you've got to know that. What is the value of a sale for them or the value of a lead for them? You need to know that. And then you need to understand what you have to work with in order for you to say, hey, I think we can do a really good job with this. I think we can make this campaign work and pay off for you. So once you get those pieces of information, then you look at where they have historically been. So in this case, Paxar typically mailed out 3,000 pieces. They got a 1% response rate, which translates to 30 orders, and their average order size was $900, so they made $27,000 when they did campaigns like this. You're thinking, I can help you, I can do better. So you say, well, I can get a 4% response rate. 4 is high. Like, you would have helped this customer even at 2%. So again, we talked about before, don't overestimate if you don't have to. So 4% is going to be 120 orders, and then that's $900, still same price per order. And so looking at $108,000 worth of value for this customer. So their net gain is $81,000. So when you look at it, you're printing 750 sheets of paper here. You're doing some programming. You're printing, cutting and traying and tagging for the post office on this. If you help them dream up, here's what you should do. It should be variable. You should incorporate pieces of this into the campaign. Then there's some value in that, up to whatever makes sense, less than $81,000. So the cost plus, you're going to leave money on the table. Cost plus, you might charge for a job like this, $1,500, and you made them $108,000. They're going to love you, but you're going to position yourself as a commodity provider. So your opportunity there is, what part of that $81,000 can I get? Okay. So here's what they did remember, and they actually ended up with 7.34%. So they got that company $153,000 in incremental revenue. Okay, now you don't know that. People have asked me over the years, can I price on what we deliver? I think it's a great idea. It's hard to do in the beginning when you're not sure what you're doing, and if you can really deliver that. It's hard universally because a lot of times customers don't really understand what they're doing, but it's a great model if you can figure it out, because you would have gotten some of that $153,000 the difference. In this case, you're going to say, hey, I think I can get you $81,000 worth of value. So you would look at pricing based on that $81,000 incremental value. So some of the rules of thumb on that are 10% of the value. So we're going to make you $81,000, so we could charge $100 for this campaign, $8,100. Here's like an example for a health club that one of my customers did. So they had, current mailing of 40,000 pieces. Their current response rate was about 3%. They had no way of nurturing. So there was no landing pages. So basically customers either came in and signed up for the health club or they didn't. So typically they got about 1,200 new members when they did this. And so, times the revenue for health club membership based over the lifetime value, it'd be $1.8 million for those 1,200 people. They were proposing, we think we can take it up to 4.5. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to get 1,200 nurture leads. So we're going to have the 1,200 people who said, still the same 1,200 people that respond, but you're going to have 600 additional people that hit the landing page, didn't sign up right away, that you can keep on talking to. And let's say you're able to convert 120 of those, then you're looking like a revenue stream of $1.98 million. So that's incremental revenue of 180,000 extra dollars. So you can charge some portion of that. So if you charged roughly 10%, that'd be 18,000 for that campaign. Any questions on any of that? Okay. So here's kind of the rules of thumb. You can start at that 10%, and I will tell you this. In the beginning, that is really hard to do because you're going to look at what your cost plus is, and you're going to say, it's only costing me $800 to do this job, and I was going to mark it up to $1,500, and you want me to charge $8,100 for it? I hear that a lot. So, and I understand that. Something doesn't feel quite right about it. So I'm not saying it has to be 10%. The rule to take away is you don't want to leave that value for that customer, and you don't want to leave money on the table. You actually did that work. And if you charge cost plus, you're devaluing what you did. So somewhere between cost plus and 10% is where you should land. Okay, and remember the key thing is you can't do that value-based pricing if you're talking to a commodity buyer, so a typical purchasing person. So let's look at on the web to print side. We all know what the value of that is. Used for collateral management, transfers the labor associated with it to the user. The users can order 24/7. The collateral can be either static or variable. It maintains brand consistency for that end user who spent tons of money on building their brand, and it's a sticky solution for you. So all good news. There's really two parts to look at the web to print side: what you can save them and what you can make them. So let's look at what you can save them. Here is a accounting of hours. If this customer had 100 salespeople that were out in the field, or 100 franchisees, or 100 dealers, and they all ordered one thing a week, and you had one person processing all those orders, that would end up to be 5,200 requests at 20 minutes in order to deal with it. Call the printer, get 3 quotes, get them back, call the customer, tell them what it costs, all that stuff, about 20 minutes. Total annual requesting process time is over almost 1,800 hours a year. So if that person was making $45,000 and was getting benefits equaling their total cost at $54,000, that's what it's costing you to manage those 5,200 orders, $54,000 a year. So if you're going to save that customer that, then that's a lot of value for them, and you're going to save it for them year after year after year after year. So, you're not going to give that away. Hey, it took us, 40 hours to program the site, so we're charging you $4,000 or something. I mean, you don't want to do that because the customer is going to realize a ton of value there. Here's another way of looking at it when you're caring about the inventory turns and things like that. So let's say this customer was spending $100,000 historically on print. You're going to reduce the amount that they're printing because it's going to be print on demand. They're going to not carry, they still have to carry what they are keeping in stock, but you're going to, because it's print on demand, you're going to increase the number of inventory turns a year. You have some order fulfillment cost differences there because it's all online now. It costs them to manage that, to deal with you in a manual capacity, and that's somebody who's they're paying to do that. versus transferring a lot of that to the website to do. And then you have waste and obsolescence, which is radically reduced. So you go from 20% waste and obsolescence, which is typical, to 2% with an online system. So, and their design spend is going to decrease as well. It's going to go from, 50,000 clean sheet, keep designing stuff over and over, to a template-based system where you do the initial design and then people run with it. So as you can see in that, there's a lot of opportunity savings for the customer there that you can now charge for. So here's kind of what that might look like, and your net savings for them would be over $100,000. So you get to decide how you want to charge for your building of the solution based upon the fact that you're probably helping them to the tune of $115,000. Another way to look at it is kind of blend those two things together. So here's an example that one of my customers did. So increased cost of goods sold right now, they were paying like $10 per order to do things. They had $82 an order a month to use their other provider, which was an online system. So that was looking at that kind of money, $98.40. They looked at reducing all that, and also the added expenses for mail and courier fees that they were paying because things were not getting done locally. They were using an out-of-area provider. So when you add that all up, okay, there's a lot of savings that are going to go away because of that. Then they tried to put a calculation on the brand dilution. So this was a real estate company. So they said, okay, if you're losing one sale, which was roughly $8,000 in fees for that broker, $8,000 a month from one sale because your brand was diluted and the right people didn't know to use you, that would be worth $96,000. Lost opportunity because you can't get your medium producers up to top producers. So they figured out, you have $1 million in sales times 10 agents per year, and what that value would be, what they're selling. So if you can take those medium producers and turn them into top producers, and then look at the commission on their increased sales because they now have the right documents through this web portal, then you might be looking at $400,000 in opportunity that they could capture. Inability to recruit new top performing agents because they have a system that wasn't good. So maybe you lose some agents over to another broker, or you aren't able to capture new ones. So basically they looked at that whole financial impact, and they said with saving stuff and with lost opportunity, it was costing them about $710,000 a year for the system that they had today. So the rule of thumb when you're saving people is to charge 20% of the savings, or if your proposal is based on opportunity, like that case, if we're trying to sell more stuff because we give them a better, then you're back to that 10% that we talked about earlier. So somewhere between 10% and 20% is the value of what you can charge. 20% of the savings that you're going to give them, or 10% of the opportunity they're going to capture. And then lastly, you want to propose this differently. So you can't charge for, do value-based pricing and fax over an estimate that your computer prints out, because the two don't line up. Remember, we talked about the coffee before. It has to line up. So if you're going to be charging value-based pricing, you have to do like a full-on proposal, something with the cover letter, something with an executive summary of what you're going to do, something with a statement of work that outlines what you're doing in what phases and what specifically you're doing, and then an implementation schedule that shows the customer, here's your responsibilities in being able to make this happen on time. And then they need to sign something, because then it feels like a more valuable solution. Okay, does anybody have any questions on any of that? Okay.
No, this is Jay. I think that's going to be a real shift in, how we're used to pricing based on opportunity and value.
Right, and you guys, you can't go like from what you're doing today all the way over to here in one fell swoop. But if you find that you now have an opportunity to do something that's a little bit more complex, that has pearls and emails in it, or maybe even just emails in conjunction with the print postcards you're doing, you want to set it up in proposal fashion. not say, okay, we'll do those emails for you for, 2 cents an email, because that makes something that's valuable back into a commodity. Here's just some examples of some people in their positioning. So these guys, Ryder Dickerson, they've positioned themselves as being value-added people. Their website also carries that through. So if someone working with them is already assuming, okay, you do something different than just this stuff. So you can see we rely on Ryder Dickinson to help us stay on the forefront of marketing. It's what that client is saying. And that's the first thing when you get to their website. And if you look at the tabs about us, what we do, who we do it for, it's what we do is all strategic. Who we do it for is all these customers where they're doing strategic things. Client solutions, they actually have best case studies and things like that. So they're carrying that whole value proposition all the way through how they communicate what they do in the marketplace. Here's the ideas page. So they're talking about strategic and consultative services and integrated and creative thinking and measurable business results. So they've really carried that messaging all the way over. Now you can see they've got a little bit of printer over here, but primarily the focus area is on that value add. And here's another company called Global Thinking, creating, connecting, so you can see how they're kind of positioning themselves. So the message here is ultimately these guys can charge more than a printer who is now trying to get into cross-channel and is in their initial forays of what they're doing. You're going to experiment a little bit with this value-added pricing and try to slowly transition yourself. These guys already have done that, so they are able to charge more for what they're doing. Okay, so, and here's the proof is in the pudding. Experienced providers can charge more. So there's a slide showing, what they are able to charge vis-a-vis, their competitors. Now here's an example of something where it's a printer who's trying to get a little value in there. So they're clearly positioning themselves as like printing for less, so low cost, but they're throwing in personalized direct mail. So yeah, that's a value-added service, but they've thrown it in as if it's a commodity. So they're going to have a hard time getting a premium price. So they're going to be back in that cost-plus model no matter what. Versus the other slides that I showed you, those guys can price on value. Okay, so here's another one, CC PressNet. So, they talk about bindery and mailing services and CD duplication and graphic services way down at the bottom. They talk about direct mail marketing, mailing services, email personalization. So they're going to have to price this more cost-plus commodity because that's the way they positioned themselves. Okay, so in summary, there's lots of different ways to price across channel campaigns. The most lucrative is focused on that value that the campaign actually delivers, and that's true for web to print as well. But it requires that you're calling on different types of decision makers and that you go through a process of trying to quantify what that savings is or what that additional value is for the prospect. And it also means that you've got to propose it differently. Everything has to line up. You can't do a typical, estimate that spits out of your system and say, oh, by the way, we're marking this up 100% because it has a lot of value. The tactics that you use, the whole process has to be built around that value. And then don't forget, even if you're going to do cost plus to start, don't forget about some of those other things like, hey, I've got some marketing experience. I've been a business owner for 30 years. I've been watching what's happening in the market. So I'm not going to charge $75 an hour for that marketing strategy. I'm going to charge $125 because you're getting the value of my expertise and business acumen that's going into the recommendations here. So there are ways to add value even if you're not going all the way out to that sort of value-based pricing that is based on what you're going to drive for them in terms of savings or value or opportunity. Okay? So that's it for me. Anybody have any questions?
Well, thank you, Kate. That was outstanding. Good information on how to price these services, and I think that was a great follow-up from the session that we had in September. Thank you very much.
Okay, you guys all...
Quick question. Hello?
Oh,
Sorry, where do you get these percentages for the added value or added response rates?
The percentages, can you give me a little bit more? I'm not sure I understand the question.
On one of the proposals, you were saying the response rate goes up from 1% to 4%.
Okay. Good question. That's a good question. There's a lot of studies that InfoTrends has done, and also Caslon, which is the managing company for PODI, that have looked at what the static campaign results are and what the when you add personalization, you add cross-channel elements into it, what that increase should look like. And it varies depending on what you're trying to do, but improvement anywhere from 35% to, triple digits. So you can, and I'm not going to go to triple digits as what I'm going to advise them. So you're going to pick something that is in line with maybe other case studies that have been done that were very similar, that generated that result, that type of thing. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
And
one other question is, what else, from a commercial printer trying to move into marketing services, what software, what kind of people skills do we have to develop to move into marketing services?
Well, it's interesting because on some level you have a little bit of it now. Like if you're doing mailing, then you have some ability to do data. You can do that. If you are doing some level of graphic design, you have the ability to start to move into that. The more you get involved in doing these things, what is really like the missing link for a lot of people, that person who has an intuitive understanding of business and marketing, which in your case for smaller businesses like you is typically the owner. Because you'll find that I have a guy who can do a mail sort and he can push buttons and get me the right data out, or I have a person who, if I say, hey, design this with an apple on it and here's the words I want, can design something. But when you do cross-channel, you need like that overlay of marketing expertise that is able to question things. So, I'll give you an example. Like, we did a job once, and it was for like the top customers at a grocery store. So we get the data from the customer, and we program everything. But my data person was really more of a marketing mind, and he comes to me and he goes, hey, why would their top customers not have earned any points? And I'm like, wouldn't have. That would be impossible. So he's like, well, that's how it's coming up. And because he didn't just push buttons, he actually thought about what he was doing, we spotted that the customer had made a huge mistake on cutting their data. So instead of printing 50,000 pieces that were wrong, he caught it because he was thinking of it like a marketer and not just a guy who pushes buttons. So ultimately the answer to the question is, initially when you first do this, that's going to be you. The person who thinks like that is going to be you. And then replace positions down the road, you want to look for a market, a mailing guy who's pushing buttons who has a little bit more understanding of information and understands a little bit more about marketing. A designer who has some background in both web and print and maybe email or mobile.
Okay, gotcha. Are there any resources available for someone like me to learn about these marketing skills?
Yeah, there's tons. I mean, PODI is a great resource for that, but there are, now that we're in a content marketing world, if you Google, like cross-channel marketing expertise training, let's say, those 4 words, you're going to get tutorials that have been built by all the vendors that do stuff and are producing content. So Mindfire, for example, has a lot of good content free of charge. There's something called Velocify, something like that, VELOFI or something like that. That is a lead generation company, but they've built a lot of content that would help you learn. So just Google what I said, and I'll also, because I subscribe to a lot of these newsletters, and so as I get things I think will be helpful to you, I'll email them to Jay.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Okay, so with that, I say Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Everybody have a great holiday. Talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Jay.